Marilyn Danley wasn't even in the US during the Las Vegas shooting, but police have still named Stephen Paddock's girlfriend a person of interest in the case. Paddock reportedly wired her $100,000 and sent her abroad days before the attack. The girlfriend of the man behind the Las Vegas bloodbath that killed 58 innocent people said Wednesday that the man she knew was a kind person who gave no hint of his oncoming murderous rampage. "I knew Stephen Paddock as a kind, quiet, caring man," Marilyn Danley in a statement through her attorney after an FBI interview. "I loved him and I hoped for a quiet future together with him. He never said anything to me or took any action that I was aware of, that I understood in any way to be warning that something horrible like this was going to happen." Danley, who described herself as a mother and a grandmother, returned to the U.S. Tuesday night after visiting her family in the Philippines, where she has ties. She was in the Philippines when Paddock fired the fatal gunshots out of a 32-story window of a Las Vegas high-rise hotel on Sunday. Danley, 62, said in the statement that a couple of weeks ago, Paddock told her he had found an inexpensive plane ticket for her to go visit her family. Once she was there, she said, he wired money to her that was to be used to buy a home for Danley and her relatives. The FBI says he wired $100,000. She said that the plane ticket and money for the home made her concerned that Paddock was pushing her away. "I was grateful, but honestly, I was worried that first the unexpected trip and then the money was a way of breaking up with me," Danley said. "It never occurred to me in any way whatsoever that he was planning violence against anyone. I have not made a statement until now because I have been cooperating with authorities. I voluntarily flew back to America, because I know the FBI and the Las Vegas Police Department wanted to talk to me, and I want to talk to them. I will cooperate fully with their investigation. Anything I can do to help ease suffering and help in any way I will do." As investigators continued their quest for Paddock's motive, details continued to emerge. The victims included construction workers, government employees, college students, even Disneyland cast members. The latest fatality was a Californian, a hero removed from his ventilator about 12 hours after the hailstorm of bullets finally concluded. President Trump arrived in Las Vegas on Air Force One, with the shattered windows of the hotel room from which Paddock conducted his grisly assault visible from the runway. "America is truly a nation in mourning," Trump said after meeting with some of the hundreds who were wounded in the attack. FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe said investigators are working to reconstruct Paddock's life and patterns. McCabe added that investigators were looking to speak to anyone and everyone who may have crossed his path in the days and the weeks leading up to this horrific event. Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Sheriff Joseph Lombardo initially named Danley as a person of interest in the investigation, although Danley is not considered an accomplice. Nevertheless, investigators were expected to subject her to extensive questioning about the gunman's activities prior to the assault, the extensive cache of weapons acquired by Paddock and the state of his finances. Paddock also engaged in several unrelated transfers of thousands of dollars, believed to be related to his high-stakes gambling activities in Las Vegas. Authorities updated the number of casualties in the attack from 527 to 489, and they said 317 have been discharged from hospitals. Lombardo said some patients at the hospitals were inadvertently double-counted, and some who were injured prior to the shooting were mistakenly counted in the attack. All were shot by Paddock in an 11-minute barrage from his perch at the Mandalay Bay Resort Hotel on the city's iconic Strip. The high-stakes gambler and retired accountant killed himself before a SWAT team blasted into his suite. Investigators say the shooting rampage was meticulously planned and included specially modified weapons. Investigators found a computer and 23 guns in Paddock's hotel room. 19 more guns were found at the home he shared with Danley in Mesquite, about 80 miles northeast of Las Vegas, and 7 at his house in Reno. Authorities said at a press conference late Wednesday that Paddock also had 1,600 rounds of ammunition and several containers of an explosive commonly used in target shooting in his car. The total amount of explosives weighed about 50 pounds. Lombardo said he didn't know what Paddock was planning with the explosives, if anything. He added that the sheer volume of the cache of weapons that Paddock amassed seemed to indicate that he got help from somebody, but he quickly added that the investigation has thus far found no accomplices. He had to have some help at some point, the sheriff said. At some point, Lombardo said, Paddock contemplated the idea of escaping from the hotel, but eventually he abandoned the idea and killed himself. Lombardo also said none of the cameras Paddock put up in the hotel room were recording. Authorities say he set up cameras in the peephole of the door and outside the room to watch for police closing in on him. Paddock made his attack even more deadly by adding legal bump stocks to 12 semi-automatic rifles that allowed them to mimic fully automatic gunfire. Paddock had gambled during his stay at the Mandalay Bay, and he had rented a room at Las Vegas' Ogden Hotel the week prior, during Life is Beautiful, a 3-day music and arts festival. It was unclear whether Paddock had initially targeted the Life is Beautiful festival or was scoping out his later attack, Lombardo said, but he indicated that officials would review recorded footage of his stay. The Life is Beautiful festival featured Chance the Rapper, Muse, Lorde and Blink-182. Lombardo said that Paddock, a seemingly bland and dull retiree who likes to spend hours playing video poker, may have had a secret life. Lombardo appeared to be in disbelief that Paddock could plan such a meticulous attack undetected. He referred to the statements of an FBI profiler, who said there were typically telltale signs associated with these types of attacks, such as living a reclusive life. We have not found that yet, Lombardo said. Before Danley moved in with Paddock, she was an outgoing person and a great neighbor, people who knew her said Tuesday. The Australian Associated Press reported Danley was born in the Philippines and moved to Queensland in eastern Australia in the early 1980s. She left Australia for the US in 1989, where she worked in casinos. Her 2 sisters, who live in Australia, told the country's Channel 7 TV network there was no way Danley knew what Paddock was planning. Their identities were concealed and their names withheld. She was sent away. She was away so that she will be not there to interfere with what he's planning, said one sister who lives in Queensland. Paddock's victims were among more than 20,000 people celebrating country music at the Route 91 Harvest Festival. The gunfire erupted in the concert's closing minutes while headliner Jason Aldean performed. The 58th victim was Californian Chris Hazencombe, 44,